We've been talking about systems today, and it occurred to me that IDEA is a system. And there's a book called Thinking in Systems by Donella Meadows. And she talks about characteristics of good systems, and there are three. The first is they're resilient, and so they just kind of know how to stick around. The second is they have this self-organizing attribute. And so they, if you disrupt them, they figure out how to come back. And the third is they have a hierarchy. And the hierarchy is designed in such a way that you can do a lot of things. And if you think about some of the ideas we're talking about today, they're massive, they're ambitious, dare I say impossible for any one organization to take on, no matter how well-resourced or amazing they are. And the thing about hierarchies is you design the system into subsystems, and each component knows its role, and as a result, you can actually do incredible things. It's how our bodies work, it's how buildings work, it's how cities work. So just some ideas I wasn't planning on sharing, but been inspired by some of the conversation today. I also do want to say, I was supposed to have 30 minutes for this, but Tom put only 27 on the clock. So just calling him out, he thought I didn't see. All right. Enough of that. We're not messing around here, all right. I've got four things I want to talk about. Since we're going to be talking about sustainable livelihoods, I think it's important we all have a sense of what that is. The second is context, because I think it's important to just ground ourselves in the reality of where we're talking about. And then much of my work is on market creation that can actually alleviate poverty, create prosperity, so that the vast majority of people in the world have access to the things that you and I have access to. And I'll share some info on that. And then the last is where we go from here. Full disclaimer, my slides will not be as nice as Joy's. You've been warned. I took this from the deck, the pre-read that was sent. And maybe this deck will be available to everyone. But the thing I want to focus on as we talk about this is two ideas in here. The first is how we've defined sustainable livelihoods, and the second is what it requires. How we've defined it and what it requires. We are part of the global development community, international development, foreign aid, whatever term we want to use. And I think there is a tendency to focus on the first part, less on the second part, less on what it requires. And so as we go into our sessions this afternoon and tomorrow, let's be inspired by the first, but let us ground every idea we come up with in the second. Because if we don't, then we're just having interesting conversation. And what's interesting about that is, I've started to get older and a lot more grays. It occurred to me recently that these conversations that we have year over year, time and time again, for me, they are conversations. Whether we do them or not, somehow I'm going to be fine. My kids are going to be fine. I'm going to be good. Whether the ideas we discuss succeed or not, all of us in this room are going to be fine. Even if I lose my job tomorrow, even if you lose your job tomorrow, we are all so connected and so privileged that we will be fine. But if we don't get this right, then the 60%, as Joy has said, which I will assure it's a lot bigger than 60%, for many of them it's life or death. So it's really my plea to say, let us push the conversation. Let's ask, how are we going to pay for that? Who are some of the funders we can bring to the table? What's the sustainability of that? We don't have to have answers for every question, but we have to stress these ideas. Because win or lose, we've already won. We've already won. There is no version of my life right now that I can imagine where I will not be fine. I mean, unless I get a terminal illness, but then that's like, that's for everybody. So let's keep that at the back of our minds as we wrestle with ideas. A couple other things I want to share are anchored in this notion of sustainable livelihood and simplistic ways that I've come to appreciate the world. And so hopefully this helps, because talking about economics can be a lot, but I try to boil things down to what are we really doing here? And if you think about your life, at some point it began, and then you encounter struggles on a daily basis. You encounter struggles, and an example of a struggle is you're sick. You get sick, and what do? The minute you encounter a struggle, you are in search of a solution that will help you make progress against that struggle. So whether it's go to a pharmacy, get some medication, see a doctor if it's more serious, get admitted, this is pretty much the fundamental way we go through life on a daily basis. You could substitute illness with hunger, with the need to clothe yourself, house yourself, and so on. It turns out the vast majority of people in Africa live in what I call compounded struggle, because if you can't solve one, it just compounds and compounds and compounds. And so this is sort of what grounds my work in making sure innovation creates markets that makes it possible for the 96%, which I'll share how I got that number here in a second, can get access to the things that I have access to. And these are not frivolous things. This is, I have a headache and I have access to something that could help. We heard about malaria. Pauline talked about 600,000 people dying every year. My good brother Tom talked about millions of people who will die by 2050 every year if we don't do something about AMR. I was never going to be a doctor because I can't pronounce a lot of the doctor words. Antimicrobial resistance, something like that. All right, let's ground this in context. Over the past 45 years, this is the growth of the global economy. Agree or disagree, we overconsume or not. Don't shoot the messenger, okay? But then if you look at the percentage of GDP per capita in certain parts of the world relative to the G7 countries, US, Canada, we got Canada in the house, Japan, Germany was in the house. So there's still some GIZ people, right? The G7 countries, you can see that the percentage of GDP per capita has come down. And this is not all there is to measuring an economy, but this is important, and I'll share why. I see this, and I see that there's just a lot of room to create markets that work for the vast majority of people that live in Africa, Latin America, and so on. Now I teach, so a little pop quiz. Can anybody throw out some numbers here? You look at the government. We've talked about their budgets a little bit today and how stretched they are. Let's quantify. One of the things I like to do is quantify. I don't like to talk in abstract. Anybody have a sense for how much money? Give me a number. Give me a number. Throw out a number. Be bold. $1,000. 300. Oh man. All right, one more number. 1,400. Okay, my brother 300 wasn't too far away. All right, 475. But that doesn't tell you anything, right? Because I mean, what is 475, right? What if the U.S. was like 200? Well, but now we're starting to get somewhere. Now you see where Africa stands from how much money governments have to spend per person per year, and this covers everything: education, infrastructure, servicing debt, corruption. What was that? What was that? Okay. This covers everything. I left Nigeria when I was 16, and I was never gonna go back. I don't like my country. What's wrong with us? We're too this. We're too that. But then again, maybe it's the grays. It also occurred to me recently that many of the problems that Africa is faced with, they are inconveniences to me. And I get to talk about them at a dinner table while I'm eating with friends, and it's an annoyance. But again, for most people on the continent, right, it's life or death. They've lost kids, and they're living in this perpetual struggle. So my conversation about governments has shifted. They are no longer this monolithic thing. They are a group of people, we know many of them, who are severely under-resourced. They're not perfect, but severely under-resourced. The other thing is they operate in an economy dominated by what folks call the informal sector. And this has implications. Implications on their ability to tax, implications on ability to know what's going on in the economy, even in their ability to serve the citizens. This has implications. That's why the work of our good sister Joy is so important, because in building an urban future, you get some kind of structure that we can now better manage. We can better help folks. Talked about this earlier, the panel this morning, and our good sister from Ghana mentioned this. You go to the capital markets, you're an African country, you are not borrowing at 2%, 3%, 4%. You've got $475 per person to spend per year. Much of that is going to servicing debt at ridiculous interest rates. Now, I'm just laying out context. That's all I'm doing. I'm not even saying, should we do this or that? Because as we discuss these big, bold ideas, this is the context in which we are discussing these ideas. This is the context. This is how it shows up. I'm not going to dwell on this in the interest of time, but one of the things I like to do is just look at consumption per capita. And this just shows some foods in Africa, poultry, eggs, and seafood, and so on. This is shows you the consumption per capita, and then you see the global average. In wealthier countries, those numbers are way higher. And so the issue of malnutrition and food insecurity, agricultural productivity, which we've discussed already, it's apparent here. All these impact sustainable livelihoods. This is on health and how we lose about 500,000 people a year because of medicines and access to medicines. Up to 20% of medicines in pharmacies are counterfeit, right? A lot of healthcare challenges push people into severe debt. So you wake up tomorrow, you're a poor person on the continent, you start to feel sick, maybe life was okay, you were driving a taxi, all of a sudden your life is upended, right? These are things that maybe will not really happen to many of us because we have systems that are designed to take care of us. By 2100, we're going to need to create 1 billion jobs, something like that. And you see the distribution in several African countries. The good news is almost everybody here, if not everybody, will be gone by then. If you are not gone, you will probably wish you were gone by 2100. But the bad news is this is not a static thing, right? 2100 is not going to happen tomorrow. We're going to have to get to 2026, 27, 2030, 2035. And as we get there, closer here, the makeup of our society will continue to change, not start to change, continue to change. I'll skip this, but this is just the reality of the political economy and how countries, whenever you go from a dictatorship to a democracy, the first 25 years, you actually lose 20% of your GDP per capita. Again, just the reality of where we find ourselves. And then income distribution. You know, I put that number 4% earlier. This is from the Pew Research Center that tells us about 4% of people in Africa live on less than $300 a month. 99% live on less than $600 a month. So just a little FYI there. And so we've talked about we today a lot. We've used the language we. And I think sometimes when I'm at a summit or a conference and I hear we, I'm like, who's the we? They're out there somewhere. Look, the we is us. The we is you. The we is me. The we is the ones who are so privileged that no matter how bad life gets, we'll be okay. We have friends, family, networks. The we is us. And so as we leave here over the next couple of days, as we leave, if we're not talking about ideas that are a little bit uncomfortable, that maybe we haven't done before, that maybe look a little different, then we're going to get the same thing we've been getting, right? And that's fine, right? Like this little graph, it moved up a little bit, right? You can see that. And we can celebrate some impact and success. But maybe let's get a little uncomfortable. Now, it doesn't mean we have to go crazy, but let's talk about ideas that scare us a little bit, so that we can actually figure out ways to get this graph moving up. And I know somebody's going to tell me GDP per capita is not the only thing, the best thing. It's a proxy. It's a proxy, guys. I know it's a proxy. It's not all. It's the best I got. All right. So what do? We are the ones who have to create this new ecosystem. Now, I love this book. It's by a professor at Harvard Business School, Tarun Khanna. We have to create the systems that enable others to create. It's what we've been talking about here. It's why IDEA is so important. Because technically, it's really nobody's job. When you think about what this alliance stands for, you know, the Gates Foundation, they have their goals. The MasterCard Foundation, they have their goals. CETA has its goals. And GIZ, they have their goals. But to be able to bring all these folks together to say, let's figure out how to create systems so that innovations can scale. That's hard. That's incredibly difficult, right? But you see, the beauty about it is that's how systems work. Any good system, look, like I am a system. You are a system, but you are made up of hands and legs and a heart and feet and right. Your central nervous system. They're all made up of different components that are good at different things, but working together to keep you alive and functional. All right. Innovation and market creation. I'll share some ideas here. I got only 7 minutes left, so I have to be quick. Well, technically 10 minutes, because So I'm gonna take my 3 because I fought for these 30 minutes. He was gonna have me here talk for like 15, 20 minutes. I was like, come on, man. And then so I fought for this 30. I'm gonna take my 3. Okay. These are a sampling of things that I have enjoyed over the past 12 hours, right? 12 hours. These are not frivolous things. These are just very basic things. I woke up, I brushed my teeth, I put some clothes on, relatively inexpensive. They're not, I got my phone in my pocket. A car brought me here. Took some pills because I get headaches quite a bit. Slept on a bed at the hotel. Many of you did. These are not frivolous things. These are not like, oh my gosh, he's showing off. But these things are not available to most people in Africa, right? We've said 0.3% of people on the continent live on more than $1,500 a month. 0.3. It's about 4 million out of the 1.5-ish billion. You know how, I don't know, you sit around with your friends and you say, if you could come in another life, what would you want to come as? I'm like, no, I'm good. I don't want to come in another life. Because look at the odds, man. Somehow we made it. Like we're in there. And so coming in another life, I'm all right here. I will take this one wherever it leads. I don't play that game. But can we imagine an Africa where the average person has access to these things that we've had access to? A decent space to come and experience one another, decent transportation, and so on and so forth. That's the goal. As we do that, I want to share a framework for market creation that's helped me anchor a lot of things that I work on because I found myself talking in the abstract too much, and I had to ground myself. And so with what we're going to talk about over the next couple of days, my hope is we're always connecting it to specific struggles. Whatever solutions we come up with, we can articulate. What is this thing going to solve, really? Let's push ourselves. The struggle is very specific, right? So, like, again, let's say I'm hungry. The solution I need is food. I don't need medicine. I don't need new shoes. I need food. And so that's the solution, right? So we have to try to be specific with what we're talking about. The next thing is, okay, who are the people best equipped to solve that struggle in the context of the ideas we come up with today and tomorrow? After that, we have to understand those people exist within an ecosystem, right? There are existing organizations doing similar work, different work. There are financiers, there are implementers, there are private sector companies, government folks. We map out the ecosystem, who's doing what. And then every ecosystem exists within the context of a country, laws and rules and norms, right? So something might be a law, but if it's not part of the cultural norms, well, good luck. We got a lot of good laws, but do people practice them? We have to understand that. Then and only then can we now develop a solution that takes all these things into consideration to address the struggle that we've identified. Okay, so it's just a framework that just keeps us grounded. Market creation is a very specific thing, right? And so much of my work is connecting that to how do we create products and services that are affordable and accessible to the average person so that when they experience struggle, they have something they can consume to help relieve that struggle so they make progress. That's all a market creating innovation is. When you do this, you create sustainability because you have people who are there to make the thing, to produce it, to distribute, to sell, to market. You have people who are there to buy the thing, who it's helping relieve their struggle. Okay. Now, the 3 phases of market creation are quite distinct. And I'll rush here. The first is discovery, which is where you take access from 0 to 1. And so very few people have access to the thing. And that's where I think a lot of products and services are on the continent today. It's discovery. Very few of us have access to quality healthcare, quality schools, quality housing, and so on. It's an important phase, but it's just the first phase. The second phase is the distribution phase. Now, this is where we take access from, discovery takes us from 0 to 1. Distribution goes from 1 to many. Distribution sets up the infrastructure of society. This is where we begin to create for the masses. This is where it's no longer a product or service that's available to the few, but now many more have access. As you can imagine, this impacts so many components of an economy. It's no longer a product development problem. It's no longer just a distribution problem. And this is a financing problem. This is a regulation problem. This is a mass consumption problem, right? And so distribution is incredibly difficult to do, but it's the second phase. And dare I say it's the phase that's lacking in Africa. There are very few products and services that you can say the average person has access to. The last phase is democratization. Democratization happens when the government typically, or we in the development community, we identify something as so important that everybody needs to have it, from electricity to public education, healthcare, pensions, insurance, and so on. That's democratization. So it takes access from many to all. So this 0 to 1, 1 to many, many to all. The struggle is we live in this constant place of discovery and democratization without much distribution. And so we keep trying to build democratization initiatives, electricity for all, affordable housing for all, whatever it is for all, for as many, for the last mile, financial inclusion for the last mile. But we don't have distribution. And this is so important because this is ultimately what pays for democratization efforts and the research to do good discovery. Okay. And so as we're talking in our groups, what are we, what components of distribution are we building? This is an example, AML. I'm not going to belabor it. But for me, this is an example of what success could look like. It's one of the largest dairy organizations in the world, and they support 3.5 million farmers. And they've built this such that the farmers are part owners, so they share in the profits, in some of the decision making. And you look at 50 years ago, $2.5 million in revenue. Today, over $7 billion. It's no longer just consumption within country. They're now exporting. We can do this. We can do this. We can do this. Where do we go from here? The only way we get this right is by partnership. That's why this alliance is so important. No one organization, I think, can do it by themselves. The first is ecosystem innovation. This essentially helps us boost productivity. In the interest of time, I'll speed through and I'll talk to you. I'll talk your ears off after we're done here. The next is financial innovation. This is really where we need to leverage our capital. Right? If you have $1, look for people who have money who can stretch that dollar. There's no reason why your dollar should only be $1 in an economy that's starved for dollars. Find people that can stretch your dollar, make it 2, make it 3, make it 5. And the last, which I'm so excited about, is social innovation. This is who gets to share in the value that's created. Look, as amazing as America is, and Western Europe and Japan, all these wealthy economies, they've essentially built an economy where the guys at the beginning, the holders of capital, they are the ones that reap the most benefit. They are the ones that reap the most. If you look at the returns to capital versus the returns to labor over the past 50 years, returns to capital is going up, returns to labor is pretty stagnant. In the age of AI, that's only going to get worse. Only going to get worse. We can build an economy where, as these new markets are being created, we get to distribute that value to the people doing the creation, like ammo. We can innovate around these things because we're bringing in the capital. I'm going to leave you with this. I started with Donella Meadows. I'm going to end with Donella Meadows. What we're doing is hard. It's not going to happen overnight. And I got 3 kids, 4, 3, and 2. Imagine if I started expecting them to pay rent tomorrow. That's not cool. You'll probably call Child Protective Services on me. That's not nice. It will take time. But because something takes time doesn't mean we shouldn't understand how long should this take? What kind of things should we invest in? Are we going in the right direction? So Donella says, look, if you have a sense of how things change, you are not going to give up too soon. You're not going to give up too soon. So anyway, I'm very grateful to all of you for your attention, grateful to Tom and the team for even thinking about this idea of IDIA, which is incredible. And I hope that we continue to, the next 10 years are way better than the first 10 years. So thank you all so much. God bless you. Thank you.